You don't look as tired as I thought you would.
Why? Because I'm not drinking Barocca and Lucas. I'll do this a little mini announcement. Had a daughter. Well, I didn't. My wife did. Little Sienna has entered the world, and Austin now has a little sister.
Yay!
But more importantly, I've got a new kitchen gadget.
Does it warm breast milk?
No, I've got all the baby gadgets already from Austin. This is a new purchase, but actually a second-hand item that I got off Facebook Marketplace. A chest freezer. Like one you can keep a body in.
Yes.
I mean, don't put that on the internet.
You know, but like in American films, they've all got chest freezers.
You've seen Dexter.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been a life changer. Like suddenly, like I had a little crappy little freezer at the bottom of my fridge that you can only keep so much in. Now I've got a filing system in my freezer. Ebbers, you would love it. Frozen fruits, my frozen vegetables, breast milk, placentas, it's got it all.
But so you've got what?
No, we won't talk about that bit.
You've got a placenta in the
No.
Yeah,
He used the plural.
Placenta.
Placentas.
No, placenta.
Oh, right, fine.
Placenta.
I was going to say you
placenta.
just hoarding.
Yeah, that was
You took the placenta.
It was weird having the placenta in the
We went
fridge
from
in the house.
don't
So
keep
there's a
dead
fridge in the
bodies
garage.
in your freezer to
What's happening? Essentially, it is. Yeah, I guess it's part of. Yeah, we won't go there. That's for another podcast.
Is that a keepsake?
That's for a Poker Face episode coming to you soon.
Did the doctor sign it? Like what is it? Keepsake?
No, it's there for benefits. I'm not going to explain any more. I wasn't going to mention the placenta.
Well, you absolutely did.
I forgot. I'm here to talk about the chest freezer, and it's brilliant.
So
also,
is this a normal freezer that you just put on its side?
No, it's a proper chest freezer. But the one thing that is most useful for is I'm in that zone, which you guys have been there before. I'm in ready meal land.
Yes,
Oh,
prep.
yeah.
And either ones I've made and stuck in there, or ones I have bought from that Cook brand that's everywhere. Like, we're struggling for time. Therefore, ready meals, they do serve a purpose, and that purpose is now.
I survived off of stuff that Kush had cooked here, and I took it home and froze it.
Yep, I'll
like
be doing
genuinely, I was like, I'll have that. Scrape that into a bag. Bosh, take it home. Lovely.
Dog bags all round.
Yeah.
Bags.
It's just one of those, there's just no routine at that. You're trying desperately to get baby into a routine, but it means that you have no routine either. And you can only grab food at any given point.
Well, it's because when you get that small window where you're like, okay, they're sleeping, you have 50 million other things that need to be done by the time they wake up, and feeding yourself isn't normally the top of the priority list.
No.
So as I said,
sleep when the baby sleeps is the advice.
Bollocks.
No. And the one time you do get to cook, my aim is to cook as much as possible
Batch
so I
cooking.
can freeze it.
Yeah, batch cook it.
Yeah.
We're going through the batch cooking process for weaning now.
Yeah, nice.
So just do it all on a Sunday afternoon. Full meals now.
full meals.
Like, we're doing full meals. Get it into the freezer. Is this boring? It's probably boring for you, Ebbers. You're
real
not.
life.
You're not dad.
It's real life. I've kept
You're off
it
the
at bay.
boat every weekend.
I've kept Latvia last weekend.
I've been to Lithuania.
I think you're doing well. Five between three of you. I think it's good going.
Yeah.
Yeah. It averages out well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's lock that number in
I'm locking
now,
mine
shall we?
in. I'm
Everyone
locking
happy
mine
to
in.
lock that
Should we
number
do a
in?
Rhett and Link?
Yeah.
And go and get
What together?
it all
vasectomy
tied
together.
together. Yeah.
Tied
together. Whoa.
Can you imagine
Whoa.
that's a horror film that doesn't need to be made? I tell you what, I'm going to segue to something far more interesting. I'd like to pull you back to
No, Evans.
something that we do on the podcast, which is your stories. You send in food-related things that often don't go to plan that are worth sharing, and this is definitely one of them from Danny. He goes like this. It was back in the early 2000s. I was in my early teens, high school years, and we were having visitors for dinner. My mother decided to make a fruit charlotte. We're talking homemade creme pat, fresh fruit on top, and it was almond flavoured. She worked through it and added the almond extract, and then asked us all to smell the mixture. She thought it smelled a bit too floral and flowery. She just couldn't understand it. So we, that being the 5 kids, all gave it a sniff and agreed it smelled like perfume. We asked my mum to show us what she'd put in, and then I panicked and realised what had happened. The funny thing was, a while back I had a school project that needed a unique bottle. So I took my perfume out of my perfume bottle and put it into the empty extract bottle and left it on a shelf in my room. However, my father, very, very clean man that he was, had come into my room, we were chatting, and he must have noticed the extract bottle and took it back downstairs and put it back where it should be, in the baking drawer. So now we had a completely inedible dessert. My mum asked me to rush to the store and get more ingredients, which I did. And here's the worst part. My mum didn't remake the whole dessert. She just kind of did a half and half mix to try and save on ingredients.
Or just dilute it.
Yeah, still don't understand why she did that. So as the dessert is being served, we're all looking at each other, trying not to laugh. We ate it and said it was great. And my brother even took some home and then promptly threw it out and vowed never to tell mum, sorry, mum.
Classic Friends trifle.
Almond extract subbed out for perfume.
Can you dilute perfume enough to make it edible?
Don't try this at home.
No.
To be honest, like a sprinkling or a grating of coconut or adding coconut milk to dilute it, it could have been coconut Chanel, Charlotte, couldn't it?
It could have been.
Yep. Shut it, placenta boy. Just to be clear, our guest, George, hasn't just been invited because his surname is Food.
No, but it is a wonderful segue.
Okay. He's doing amazing stuff, right? So George Lamb, I'd say iconic when we were growing up. Like, on all of the TV we used to watch.
Radio DJ.
Yeah, radio DJ, model. I mean, he's a good-looking chap still.
Very good-looking chap.
But absolutely everywhere. Had an epiphany mid-TV, like prime time TV slot, just decided this ain't for me. And went off to do something completely different in the world of food. Unbelievable story. Fascinating guy. As I said, I don't know if I've mentioned how good-looking he still is.
Great
hair. Intimidatingly so.
Yeah.
Is the grey hair? Is it real? Because it's perfectly
like a silver
placed,
fox.
Or like
isn't
the
it?
salt and pepper type of look.
Yeah.
No, it
Shimmer.
looked real to me. I didn't pull on it, but it did look real.
But let's not objectify him. But also recently appeared on an episode of Clarkson's Farm.
Yeah.
Which, in its third series, have to be honest, is some of the best TV that there has been in the last 5 years, I would say. Because it puts farming and serious conversations into entertaining formats that everyone wants to watch.
But I'm so glad that him and his, I think it was Andy, his business partner, who used to be part of Groove Armada, which was, again, a band in like the 90s and the noughties that we would listen to. Now I feel, having had this interview with George, I have more context as to how they ended up on Clarkson's Farm, because without this context, to me it just looked like,
Isn't that
those
George Lamb?
guys that I used to know, that why do they know so much about soil?
Yeah, absolutely fascinating guy. Went to India to discover himself. Didn't discover himself until he was in a club in Ibiza. This is our amazing chat with George Lamb.
George, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
In the pub, make yourself at home. And we're going to start the same way we always start, which is we're desperate for more ideas for our specials board. So, what is your foodgasm? And by that, we mean that one moment in time, fictional in the future or the past, that's like the most perfect meal you've ever had. What and why?
I think, so my favourite kind of meal is a kind of long, boozy lunch in the sunshine.
An afternoon boozing and a sleep.
A veranda or a terrace?
More like, so my mate's got a really lovely beach club in Ibiza. I actually just had one a couple of days ago.
Great.
And just those kind of like lunches that just drag, you know, and then maybe like other, you know, people kind of come in and out of them, and other people maybe come and join later, and just and my dad has a house in France, and the kind of lunch just seemed to go on forever, basically, and so that's all my fondest memories. And for a dish, like anything to do with clams, really, that's my jam. Like I like vongole really is the kind of zenith of all of it. He had like particularly I've just started eating meat again for the first time in I don't know 6 or 7 years, and he had a like a ballotta ham, like the kind of top end of Serrano ham, and it was just bananas.
That is what they do so well on the continent. Those kind of, you know, stop for lunch. Don't grab a sandwich and eat at your desk while you're cracking on.
Stop the day for
just
lunch.
Stop everything,
as we should,
to socialise and have good food.
Yeah, I think it's really important, man. I think it's really, really important. We just started a business recently, and trying to understand how you build culture and how you build team and how information spreads around the business, you know. And I think a huge part of that is about everybody being able to take a bit of time at lunch, and so, you know, we don't do it enough, but we try at least once a month to make sure that we get some outside food in and everybody sits and and spends a bit of time. Really, it should be every day, but it should be at least once a week, I think. Anyway, we'll work towards it.
Yeah, absolutely. So having had that sort of growing up as part of family, do you think that there's a stark difference between those types of cultures and the British culture in terms of getting people together around food? Do you think there's a big gap there, or?
I definitely think they prioritise it a lot more on the continent. Food seems to be, like Italians are the only people I know who you can sit at a meal and they'll be talking about food, about another meal.
Yeah, planning the next meal ahead.
Which is amazing. It's a new thing to me. I was like, this is great.
We only do that on holiday when there's nothing else to think about.
Yeah.
Like we're sat having breakfast, planning lunch.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I definitely think it's a shame it's not as kind of ingrained in our culture as it could be. But equally, even in my kind of like adulthood, which is now I'm kind of 20 odd years into that, the food literacy in this country is jumped massively. So
we've seen a big change even since we started doing this 14 years ago. It's really nice to see that priority of getting together as a social event around food, and whether or not that's just in a restaurant, but also making its way into like the family, the meals, the rainy barbecues. The Sunday roast has always been a massive part of sort of our British culture, which is really nice. Every Sunday, get together around a roast. We're certainly starting to see that come through a little bit more, which is really great to see.
And I mean, talking of big change, and this is what I find so fascinating about your story, is obviously earlier years was very much kind of media, show business, like celebrity, TV world and radio, and now very different from that. I wonder if you could just elaborate a bit and tell everyone how that change happened and sort of leading into some of the stuff you do now.
I mean, very kind of potted version of it. So I'd come out of school or college or whatever. My mate of mine was like, I want to be a DJ. I was like, great, I'll manage you. It all ended up going really well. Obviously, there's lots of twists and turns, but anyway, it all went quite well. Had about 5 years traveling around the world, young guys. It was great. And then kind of stumbled into TV, kind of followed my nose and followed the money, really, because I actually thought for a long time I was just going to be doing it as a bit of a stopgap. If you follow the money in television, you end up on what's called shiny floor, so that's like Saturday night TV, game shows, all the rest of it. I'd run this whole narrative about when I get to X, I'll be really happy. So I got into this thing of like, when I get to prime time, everything will be great. The reality of the situation is you just work at slightly different hours of the day, and there was no more meaning in it, and there was no more depth to it. And by that point, I'd kind of got to like the top of the middle, basically. I wasn't in the top bracket, but I was like reasonably well known. I was earning really good money, I had a very nice lifestyle. I'd had a peer behind the curtain and seen what like Nirvana supposedly looked like, and I don't know, it just wasn't fulfilling me, basically. And I was doing this game show called The Bank Job, and I had a whole kind of moment in the middle. It was a live show, and I just found myself all of a sudden, someone was in my ear like, George, and I'm like, camera
Phil,
2 or whatever,
Phil.
Well, there was a lot of that, but no, just more like come back, I'd zoned out, and I'd had this whole thing where I was just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I know that my star didn't get pulled down out of the ether to be a game show host. Like, it just can't be. That's not what I'm here for. Like, it just can't be. And I rang my dad the next day. He's an actor. Rang him. I was like, Dad, I don't know. I feel really guilty because I've got this nice house and a nice life. And at that point, literally, my face was on the side of the bus, and I was just like, I've kind of got everything. Everybody's telling me how great my life is, and I feel totally empty. And he was like, right, well. And I was like, well, what? And he's like, well, game show host. Not a very serious guy in the big scheme of things, is it? And I was like, right, cool, Dad.
You always need parents to bring you back down to earth, don't you?
Real honest chap.
And I was like, cool. Didn't want to tell me that, kind of like, for the light. And he was like, you're having such a good run at it, boy. You know what I mean? And I was like, right, okay, cool. So I was fortunate enough that I had a good run at it. I put some money in the bank, and I was just like, if I get rid of all my overhead, so if I get rid of my kind of team and I get rid of my house, I'm going to have some money, and like I could just go off and I could go and figure out who I am and what I'm meant to be doing and what the whole point of all of this is. And so I kind of had my eat, pray, love moment. I renounced all worldly goods, got rid of everything, told my agent I wasn't coming back, for a while, and I headed off to the east, and I did all the kind of stereotypical Om Shanti Om stuff. So lots of kind of sitting in the
Find
jungle,
myself, yeah.
lots of plant medicine, lots of meditation, lots of trying to, lots of soul searching. And I found out a lot of like really interesting stuff about myself, but I didn't quite like hit the, the bit and transcend or whatever. And I thought, you know what, can I swear on this or I can't swear on there? Yeah, I just it, I'll go to Ibiza. And so,
Polar opposite,
yeah.
Great.
and so I went to Ibiza and I went into this nightclub and there was this huge man. I'm quite a big guy, and there was a huge man. He's like 6'10", and he looked exhausted, and not like Ibiza exhausted, like actually existentially exhausted. And I went over to him. We kind of loosely in the same group, and I was just like, "Hey, you okay?" And he was like, "Not really." And I was like, "What's going on?" And he was kind of about to DJ, and he said he was one half of a band called Groove Armada, and he said I sold my publishing rights to my music a couple of years ago, and I've bought a farm down in Gascony, down in the southwest of France, and the whole thing's a disaster. I'm basically trying to figure out how you can do regenerative agriculture, and it's not working, and I'm about to go bankrupt, and so I'm coming to Ibiza to DJ, to earn money, to get back, to prop this whole nonsense that's going up over in France. And I was like, wow, like this is, if you'd have given me 1,000 guesses at what we were going to be talking about, like I wouldn't have got close.
I can hear the back.
Yeah, and all this time, and I'm like, sorry, what regenerative, what, mate? And I was like, I didn't even know what regenerative agriculture was at this point, and so I was like, that's really interesting. Like, do you want to hang out a bit? Like, you're going to be around? He said, well, I'm coming back every week. I said, great. Like, can we go and have some food or whatever? And so every week that summer, I'd go and have dinner with him or whatever, and he'd tell me more about what he was doing and why he was doing it. And basically, he'd have his kind of aha moment. He was sitting in an airport in Germany, I think. He's a voracious reader. He'd read everything he could get his hands on. He'd got down to this magazine, and there was an article about the perils of the industrial food system and the fact it's wrecking the planet. And it ended with the line, "If you don't like the system, don't depend on it." He's a man of like incredible integrity. Went home, 2 young kids. Says to his wife, "Joe, I think we should start growing some vegetables." Vegetables became a polytunnel became a stall, local market. Next thing, he's like, "Joe, I want to sell my publishing rights, I want to buy a farm." Buys this farm. It works slightly differently down in France, so you don't get if we all want to buy a farm, we have to sit in front of the local agricultural council. Local agricultural council is basically all the old boys in the village. You've got to prove to them why I should get the farm over you or whatever. Yeah. He's got patchy
How good
agriculture.
was his French?
Well, his French was all right. His agricultural French was terrible. He's a first generation, farmer. He's a musician. He's kind of he's an English guy. He's not getting the pick of the farms down in France, basically. So it turns out what he got, very beautiful, but an absolutely knackered farm, basically. So it had 80 years of conventional maize, which is really heavy-duty industrial agriculture, and all the life in the soil, all the soil biology was knackered. And the genesis point of all life on Earth is functioning soil health, right? So if we don't have functioning soil biology, everything that we rely on can't happen. And so his focus is like, how do I bring this soil back to life? He was adamant he was going to do it via like organic methods, basically, and he spent 2 years in a kind of war of attrition, building all sorts of mad contraptions and fighting dock leaves and thistles and all the rest of it. Was just about to throw the towel in, went to buy a book for his daughter, mislabeled in the Enid Blyton section was a book called An Agricultural Testament by a guy called Sir Albert. I literally couldn't make it up. He's like, that's a bit weird, isn't it? I should probably have a look at that. Albert Howard's been dead 100 years. He was leader of the kind of organic movement and very good friends with Lady Balfour, who set the whole thing up. And his whole thesis was plants and animals have developed over millennia working in perfect symbiosis, and when you separate them, you create all sorts of problems. And so Andy's like, oh God, right. So maybe they'd agreed at this point with his wife, who's going to sell the farm and cut their losses. He's like, maybe we have one last roll of the dice, and the last roll of the dice is we get a herd of cattle.
Yeah,
what could possibly go wrong?
It's
anyway,
an incremental change to the original plan, isn't it?
So they get 40 head of cattle onto the farm, and within a year, the balance and the equilibrium's back in the soil biology. The weeds, we're told, are the enemy. Actually, if you understand weeds, it's nature giving you a signal to tell you, oh, this plant's going to come up. If this plant comes up, that means you've got a lack of potassium. If this plant comes up, you've got a lack of magnesium. So if you know what you're looking for,
flags.
It's just a red
the canary
flag.
In the mines.
There you go. It's literally the canary in the mines. And so managed to bring the equilibrium back in, set up what is the kind of the benchmark of a regenerative farm. So small local food network, 6 families all earning a living from it, on-site bakery on the farm, got a kiosk in the local town, first bread queues in the village since 1945.
Even in France?
Even in France, became a Chevalier de Mérite de l'Agricole, so he became a farming knight. He got...
that's your next one.
I'm still on the polytunnel version.
It's wine course.
But it is addictive.
Yeah,
Once you start growing your own and seeing that nurture, it is addictive.
Andy always says, like, once you've grown something and you've sat and you've eaten it and you've shared it with your family, it's very hard to go back. You know what I mean? And so ended up winning the Laureate Prize for innovation for the best farm in France. And it's amazing what he achieved down there. And Ed and I, the other partners in Wild Farm, we went over there and we were doing kind of busman's holidays, and we knew we wanted to be involved, but we weren't quite sure what we could do or whatever. Neither
Just
of us
rock up in your straw hat and dungarees and lend a hand.
Exactly. Mainly putting out electric fences, to be honest with you, because that's kind of like idiots' work. You know what I mean? So that was our bit, and cleaning the grain silos, which is ideal. That's a lovely job, that one, in 40-degree heat. Anyway, but we don't speak French, and so we were only so helpful down there. And so we kept on trying to encourage him to come back to the UK. And basically, you're a bit further latitudinally down on the map. And so if you take an aerial photo of his farm, you've got a kind of 200-acre green oasis. And if you look to the left and the right, well, you look in any other direction, you've got brownfield factories. And because you're that bit further down, you can see these big white patches. And I was like, what are the white patches? And he's like, that's bedrock. That's literally rock. So all the soil is gone and there's rock coming through where there should be a field where you're meant to be growing stuff. That's not good, is it? Right, okay. So literally in the same area, you've got this farm and it's glowing and it's green and it's amazing and it's verdant and it's full of life, and you've got kind of Armageddon going on next door. Okay, so then how do we figure out how we scale this? We could stay there and we could do a great job, and all the local families, and we, selling it to the schools and the local restaurants, and we could be a kind of hub for excellence, and we could run seminars, and all of that stuff's great. But actually, really, like, or the question you have to ask yourself is that for me? Is that what I want to do? And really, like, is that going to change things at pace, at scale, in the way that evidently, because of this bedrock issue, that we need? Encourage them to come back to the UK. Put him in for a kind of like a X factor for sustainability with the National Trust. They were kind of, I want to say it's not auctioning, but like kind
Judges' houses.
They put like a 25-year lease on one of their kind of marquee farms, basically in Oxfordshire, 800-acre farms, really beautiful farm that we're now tenants of. And the idea was that 3,500 applicants would have to show that the way they were going to farm it was the best sustainable method, and then the idea being that whoever won out, once we've proved it, which we're in the course of doing, the National Trust would then run that system across their whole portfolio. Right. So obviously they own a lot of big buildings, but with big buildings comes lots of land. Yeah. Anyway, he moved the family back, and so began kind of Wild Farmed in earnest. Before we were called The Real Food Fight, we're now called Wild Farmed. We're a regenerative food business. We're the biggest network of regenerative arable farmers in the UK, working to a third-party audit. We're about 100 farms or so now, 100 and something in the UK, plus the original guys in France. And we're selling that into a lot of amazing... So we're just about to launch our own branded line into Waitrose. We've been working with M&S for the last couple of years. We were in Franco Manca. We're in with Greggs and Gales. And
so is this just produce?
We sell flour.
This is the flour. This is the
we
bread.
sell flour predominantly. We
Yeah.
also sell your finished good as well. So we can sell your bread rolls, whatever. We'll sell your pizza balls if you've got a pizza business. So anything to do with flour, we'll get involved.
And that is the whole network, right? So it's not just helping the 100 different farms come together and learn the way that has worked so well for you, but then providing they're growing that stuff, making sure there's a marketplace for it. How much of it are you doing sort of front end in terms of the farming and the education? How much of it is the support of making sure there's someone to buy it?
So it's a fully vertically integrated business. The issue with all farming is all of the risk burden is put onto the farmer, and they're not cutting equitably in the value chain, basically. And so this is an American stat, but I know it reads across in Europe or Britain. 50 years ago, the average farmer was getting 70 cents in the dollar. They're now getting 10 cents in the dollar. So they've been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And so then we tried to, we're like, all right, we're going to mill it. We'll sell it into flour. We'll go a bit further up the value chain. Then you go to the bakers, and the bakers are like, oh yeah, well, it's a bit difficult for us because we don't, that's not the flour we like to use, because baking is your
science.
Baking science. If you change recipes in baking, it's a headache.
Yeah.
You've really got to be committed. So like one of the biggest parts for us was coming to the UK and going to, like, if you change even just from like 2 high street flours, it's still going to change the way you're baking. So for us, coming to the UK and starting to make our way into the artisan community and getting them to come on board, they had to be just as brave. They had to kind of match the ambition of these farmers and say, yeah, okay, we're going to make it work.
And are consumers prepared to pay that extra little bit for it, or are we going to absorb that cost? And you're battling with all of that.
And there's a bit of both, is the truth. So yeah, it's we're a vertically integrated business. If you're controlling the whole thing, you can cut it up in a way that everybody's getting a fair share.
Literally a fair slice.
A fair slice. Very good. Didn't see that one. Yeah.
Sorry. This is literally all I'm here for.
Yeah.
But can I go back to the nightclub in Ibiza? So you've heard, Andy telling you the predicament that he was in. Like, what chain of events led you to going down the path and the business from that point? And when did the penny drop that you're like, this is the thing that I'm into? Was it through the association and, helping him out and getting more involved in his journey? Or was there, perhaps another, I don't know, like another aha moment?
Yeah,
this is the thing that I'm going to go for.
There's lots of aha moments. I always think of Alan Partridge when I'm ahaing, basically. So at the end of that summer, I stayed there for the summer, and at the end of the summer, I was like, I'm going to drive back through Spain, and you go over the Pyrenees, or through the Pyrenees, and you head up to the ferry, basically. And so Andy's farm was very close. I'd been listening to this whole story. I was like, dude, I want to come and see you on my way back. He's like, yeah, no problem. I went to the farm. I don't know how much time you spent on farms in nature or whatever, but when you go there, particularly if you've had your kind of eyes opened a bit or whatever, I got there and you can actually really see it and smell it and taste it and feel it, and you're like, right, this thing's a real thing, and I'm like, I feel good here. That's what really, I suppose that's what I was looking for, because in theory, when I had this whole kind of big life that looked like success to everybody, the issue wasn't that I didn't have all these kind of trappings. It was something was just empty. I was just like, I don't know why I don't really feel anything,
Yeah.
So then I went into this new environment on this farm, and I'm like, okay, I feel something's good. This is good. Like, I know energetically this is the right kind of vibe for me. Didn't totally understand it, so and then came back to the UK, and I was getting involved a lot in working with disenfranchised, disengaged groups of young people usually, and I was helping a lot with these guys' kids company that's now disbanded. Ended up getting introduced to a whole basketball outfit down in South London called Southwark Legends. They're now called London Legends, and started doing a lot of work with these kids. And what became apparent through doing all of this work was that there's a seemingly never-ending flow of kind of, like, metaphorically speaking, half-dead bodies coming down the river that you can pull out and you can put a blanket on and you can give a cup of tea to and kind of like make sure they're okay, and then you turn around and then there's another load flowing down behind it. And I'm someone who, I'll stand there for a bit and I'll put the blankets on, but after a while I want to understand what's going on, and I want to go upstream and I want to see what's happening. And so when you look at the issues that we have, you've got a systems level problem for me. So this is a structural problem that's basically meaning that a lot of people are not being looked after by the system, or just like a lot of people in society having a very tough time. The vast majority of them, I didn't actually, I kind of glossed over it a little bit, but the real kind of like catalyst, the biggest aha moment that really made me was me getting the kind of second series or whatever of the big TV show in prime time also hit at the same time that we had the riots in London, and that was the first big thing that had happened socially in my city in my lifetime. Or I was very young when Brixton riots happened. All of a sudden I was aware of this thing, and it became very apparent to me that there was two worlds going on. I'd managed to wangle myself into the kind of the tiny percentage of people who are just smashing it basically, and everybody else is having a really tough time, and it started to jar with me a bit, and so in my opinion, a lot of the television I was making is basically distraction for poor people. It's not not like, if I'd go into a room full of like big decision makers in the world, wealthy people, none of them had ever seen me before. If I went into a room full of working class people, everybody knew everything about me. They knew my old man. They knew, and they were like, that just started to really like weigh on my conscience, and I found it difficult to square that off. And I was just like, I don't want to be complicit in selling, brain damage to poor people, basically. And like, if you're fortunate enough that you've got a voice and you can get people to listen to you, which I've always been in my life, you've got to use that for good. And you've got to, like, that's a force that you've been given, and you've got to try and do good with it and not just line your own pockets, basically. I don't want to judge other people who are doing it. Like, it's got everybody out. We all have our own reckoning. We're all accountable to, like other people. I was also in a very unique position where I didn't have any dependents. I didn't have a family. Once you lock in with kids and schools and this and that and
you're
the
on
other,
a trajectory
yeah, exactly. Like, it's very difficult, and people get caught up in that. So I was in a very fortunate position where I could just say, right, I'm out. I decided I was going to go off. I met Andy. He made me realise that actually maybe I need to get kind of return to earth a little bit. Came back, started working with all of these kind of youth groups. Basically, realised that I didn't want to be that guy just putting the blankets on. Again, it's great that there are people putting the blankets on. What's the issue? We've got a systems level, problem. How do you change any system? For me, the way forward with that is education. Like, that's how we're really going to change stuff. Another TV presenter, a guy called Rick Edwards, his best mate is a guy called Chris Fairbairn, and Chris had just become a head teacher up at a school in North London called the Totteridge Academy. Totteridge Academy had previously been called Ravenscroft. It was really struggling with reputation. It was down to about 480 kids or something when it should have close to 1,200. They had several head teachers over the course of like 3 years, and I think pretty much they were Chris and his SLT team who came in with him with the last roll of the dice. And the tough thing about trying to completely switch any kind of institution around is that it's really hard work. The good thing is you've kind of got carte blanche to do whatever you like, because
it's the last chance.
It's the last chance saloon. And so I kept on going up to the school, trying to figure out like why. I knew I wanted to be there again energetically. I was like, this is the right thing. What am I meant to be doing? Thought I'd try and maybe get some of my mates who are artists and creatives to come in, and we could make the school, because the school was built in 1955 and it was falling to bits, but it was built cheaply, and it was in a secondary modern back in 1955, falling to bits by this point. But something didn't feel quite right about that. It was getting to the point where it was getting a bit weird. People, the kind of joke was like, why is George Lamb walking around with
he's walking on the playground again.
And I was like, right, what am I meant to be doing here? And then a mate of mine called me up. He'd written, a kind of guy called Daniel Pinchbeck. He'd written a seminal book on plant medicine about ayahuasca and all the rest of it. And he said, I've written another book. I'm coming to London. Will you do the interview with me, for the launch or whatever? I said, yeah, no problem. Send the book through. Publishers send the book through. I just assume it's another plant medicine book. I opened this book. It's called How Soon Is Now, and it's about the ecological mega crisis that we're facing, right? Of course, today with Greta and everything we know, and it's absolutely the forefronts of our minds. This is, 8 years ago or something like that, so it's still page 37 in the newspaper. I read this, I open the book, I'm like, all right, Christ, all right, going for it. I'm not the most voracious reader. I love an audio book, anyway, I'm there. I've got this book. I'm just going for it. I sat and I did the whole thing in a day. I've never done it before, never done it since. Sitting at the end of the day, I was like, oh, Christ. Like, it was really...
It joins the dots of all the little information you have, but puts it into a logical sense, or a worrying sense.
Yeah. And at that point, where I hadn't seen the kind of urgency of it, what he actually said to me was, all the stuff that you're doing with all of these kids, all the stuff you're trying to sort out with all these, looking at things from a socioeconomic kind of perspective, it's all arbitrary. If we don't have a planet, like, nothing else matters. So actually, this is the only thing we need to be focusing on. And then actually, maybe the only kind of universal thing that ties everybody in, however much we think we've got differences between us, is our mutual interdependence on the well-being of the planet. You know what I mean? So I'm like, maybe that's the answer. Maybe this is what we're meant to be doing. And I went to school, and as we were leaving one day, there was this big green fence, and I'd always looked at it. I thought, what is behind that fence? And Chris said to me, we've got a 6-acre kind of like unused field. We were going to do an AstroTurf, but we don't have any money. They've got loads of football pitches anyway. And I was like, hang on a minute. hang on a minute. And then, and it just kind of sprung to me. I was like, we need to set up a Jedi training camp for eco-warriors, basically. So all kids who are coming through, like, raise their environmental literacy. So they don't even know they're going to be eco-warriors. It will just be that, it'll be their default setting. And whilst we're at it, why don't we figure out if we can sort their EQ out as well, their emotional, intelligence, right? Because all of our focus in modern, in modern education is around IQ, and none of it's about EQ. And so we've got all these hyper bright, hyper intelligent people who aren't in touch with their heart and aren't in touch with their soul. And so they're making really questionable decisions, And so it's like, how can we do a one-stop shop? Anyway, pitched it to Chris. Bless him, he said yes. He was like, I'm totally up for it. I'm not giving you any money, and I can't give you loads of time, but I will allow you to do whatever you need to do, and integrate it into the school. And that was the most important bit about it. And so we set this thing up called Grow. It is still running up there in Barnet. And the idea at the beginning was we were going to do a kind of holistic, approach to the well-being of the child. So a kind of 360 education, and we split it into 3 modules. We started off with ground. So we turned the 6-acre field into an agroecological farm. So we're growing food out there with the kids. We're then putting it into the kitchens, and they're eating it at lunchtimes, and so they're involved in the whole process. Then we've got flow, which is about how do you get into your optimum condition. So a lot of breath work, mindfulness, yoga, meditation, all that good stuff. And then the other one was think. So unfortunately, I don't know what kind of school you went to.
We went to, we all grew up in Potter's Bar, next door to Barnet.
Right. Okay. Cool. So, but like, if you go to a decent school,
we were fortunate.
Right. Okay.
So if
you go to a decent school, they try and pull the creative, expansive, critical thinking out of you. If you go to a school that's perhaps struggling a bit more, they're literally trying to keep the wheels on, and they're actually just there, basically kind of screaming at you till you're quiet, and they just want you to learn by rote. And in order for them to get more money next year, they have to hit a set of data points, and for you to hit the data points, it's just easier if you just learn it by repetition, and you're not thinking, and there's no expansion there. And so
how did you manage to get the kids involved in the growing your own? Because you said that you weren't given the time necessarily. It's not on the curriculum. Was this all extracurriculum by choice?
No, so we did actually get when I said time, as in he's like, I can't do this for you, basically, and I can't give you team. But what he did do, which basically was the crux of why it was a success, was he gave us curriculum time with all 7s, 8s, and 9s, basically, which is the first 3 years of high school, basically, and it was predominantly 7s and 8s at the beginning. And then one of the things that we noticed, though, that school works the same now as when we were at school, which is if you can get the inverted commas cool kids into something, then a lot of other people will fall into line and they'll want to do it. As you will imagine, when I went to a lot of the older kids and I said, do you fancy doing some breath work or some yoga, or do you want to come and grow some vegetables? I got fairly short thrift. So then I was like, how can I get this lot involved? And so I was like, again, the good thing about having a school that's really struggling is there's endless rooms that are empty, basically. So I found a massive room as big as this, which was just, what's this? Oh, nothing really. It's kind of on the side of another building, it's like a store. Everywhere's a storeroom for stuff that doesn't need storing. And so we built a boxing gym. It turned out, as again, fortune favours the bold. A guy called Darren Barker, who used to be middleweight champion of the world, had grown up on the estate next door. He'd gone to that school. I got in touch with Darren Barker. He was like, "I'll put you in touch with Everlast. We'll send you all the, just like boom, 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 boom." Anyway, and then got him to come down at the beginning, and so then I went back to a load of 15-year-old lads and said, "Hey, does anyone want to come to a boxing club?" Absolutely. Do you know what I mean?
It is amazing what community boxing gyms do in terms of instilling respect and discipline. But because it's boxing, of course I want to go to that. They're remarkable places. I've boxed and kickboxed all my kind of adult life. I see the difference it's made in me and the other guys in the gym, and so I knew that was a really great way in. Obviously, then the kind of manoeuvre when they come in was a big part of what we're doing here is about marginal gains, and so we need to get your nutrition right. So part of that is you're going to be coming out onto the field and we're going to be growing some food. Big part of that is about how do we get into our kind of optimum condition. Here's LeBron James
James, for example, talking about doing meditation so that he can visualize before he does a game. He's the most successful player in the history of the NBA.
Yeah.
It's wonderful manipulation.
It's great manipulation. So
for the greater good.
There. Conor McGregor was the kind of the fighter of the day.
Yeah.
He at that point was working with a guy called Ido Portal, who was the main movement expert in the world. So doing all that kind of monkey movement stuff. So the next thing you know, I had everybody going around doing all the animal flow, and you've just got to find a hook. That's the reality, like you've got to look at what look at what you're dealing with, see what's going to motivate them, find the angle, and then get them to do the thing you want them to do by showing them that that's a trajectory to get to their goal as well.
Which is such a challenge, but that's the kind of place we're in. Is that so? We find the same with food and cooking, and even students who go through food technology. It's not learning how to cook at home on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night and just get through in a basic, easy, accessible way. But the moment, if it ever did make it to curriculum, it's a textbook. It's more rote learning. It's not delivered in a practical way that music, drama, grow your own, sport, and food and cooking should be.
Yeah. For food tech, and I don't want to cast, disparaging remarks. I'm sure there's some people who are doing it, doing a great job of it. But by and large, it's a shambles. And I don't understand how we've got to a place where, like, really key life skills, like learning how to look after yourself, learning how your body works, learning how your mental health works, or how to manage your mental health, how they have become soft skills. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. And it's a nonsense, and it's something that I'm going to spend my life trying to unravel and trying to see if we can figure it out. What I would do next time round is start in food tech, and I would have started in the kitchen, because that's where you can hook people in.
It is amazing. All they need to do is one simple thing, and
it plays to all the senses. Like, things start to smell good, and then at the end they're touch and feel of fruits and vegetables, and having your hand in the soil makes such a difference.
But the simple, one of my aha moments right at the beginning of this was, burger sauce, you just make your own burger sauce. What do you mean? It's just ketchup, mayo, bit of mustard in these ratios. You taste it like, that's what I'm familiar with. All I did was squeeze some bits into, a bowl and mix it, but I've made something different. Wow. And that's the penny drop moment.
Yeah, hard drop.
Then you just go further and further down the line, don't
moment's
you?
real, boys. You know what I mean?
It really is. I mean, we did some work with an academy a few years ago, and I think the academies are the advantage because they're perhaps less bound by curriculum in that sense. And we managed to drag 20 kids into this home economics room to do, and it was extracurricular, so they all wanted to be out doing something much more fun than putting on an apron. And we did soup, and we just demonstrated how to make one simple vegetable soup, A plus B plus C, like super easy, 15 minutes, everyone tasted it. Everyone's still a little bit like, why am I here? They break off into pairs, 10 pairs in the kitchen, and they all made their own soup. They could pick their own vegetable, they could pick their own flavouring, and they could blend it all up. And maybe 45 minutes later, they all brought it back, and they had 10 different coloured, 10 different flavoured soups around the table, and just big French sticks, and everyone was dipping and sharing and try mine, try this. And then suddenly the penny dropped that we hadn't just taught them a recipe, we'd empowered them to cook any vegetable soup in the world. And they all went home and told their parents, and we got feedback the week after that they were like, their parents were excited, and it just because they'd had a chance. Yeah. And it's just providing that chance that matters.
Yeah.
But it's also like, I used to work in a school. It's that moment where you actually take a kid or a group of kids aside and go, you're good at this. And they, what? You're good. You're good at this. And then being able to demonstrate them going, well, hang on, I did that. Maybe I can do it, and maybe I found something that I'm good at, and I've experienced it as well. So even just trying the soup was, well, you made this, and look how simple it was. Imagine what you could do if you applied that to other things, or move along in that journey. Like, think about what else you could cook up, or it really sometimes is that simple of just being told you can do this, and look, you've done it. And suddenly it can completely transform their entire outlook. It is unbelievable.
And with all that groundwork in place at the school, like, how did it evolve? What were the results of that? You say the school's still sort of running that same system, the growth.
The number, when kids come to the school to sign up to come to the school, it's now so Totteridge is now if it's not it's one of the top 5 most improved schools in the country. I think probably 5 years ago won the big awards are called in education are called the Test, the Times Educational Supplement. So it won the Test for best maths department, kind of unheard of for a kind of fairly rough comprehensive school basically. And then 2 years ago it won best secondary school in the country. So like it's massive. The vast majority of kids who would list in their kind of top 5 reasons for coming to the school were putting Grow as 1 or 2 basically.
Wow, that is awesome.
So that's massive, and that really shows you feel vindicated. You're like, this thing works. I'd gone and talked to kind of like a lot of the top restaurants in London. We were going to do a similar thing, at Christmas when they do put a pound on the bill for homeless charity. So we were going to do a pound on the bill to go towards Grow and other organisations who were helping kids connect with food. I had Evening Standard was going to be the media partner. Chabuddy G, Asim was going to come and be the face of the whole campaign.
And is this where your previous life and kind of, I guess, media contacts and production
mates,
and other stuff, is that where this suddenly begins to unlock?
For sure,
and
then
leave
you got to go exactly. Well, again, if you're in a position of influence or whatever, and you know people and you can get things to happen, like do some good with it, basically. So called everybody up, got everything kind of rolling. Literally, we had the shoot booked for like a Wednesday. Monday, we got this telephone call saying, "Hey, listen, there's some kind of virus thing kicking around or something, and we're not sure what it is, and we're going to have to cancel the shoot, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks or whatever it is."
3 weeks,
anyway,
wasn't it? Always,
3
3 weeks.
So how that unfolded. At that point, we were kind of fledgling charity. The school then became the kind of local, central point for like literally keeping the wheels on for that whole community. Like it taught me a lot about myself. It showed me how amazing a school can be, how a group of committed people all coming together and trying to sort stuff out for people who are in a tough spot. Having a beautiful market garden that was producing loads of fresh food, that was great. We were able to get that out to everybody. What the real problem at that point though was, a lot of the bigger, and it's fine because of the way the system is set up, a lot of the bigger charities are actually doing the work that the government should be doing. And so they're kind of keeping the wheels on not just the community, but actually society, as a whole. And so a lot of those guys were going to their big patrons and saying, listen, we don't know what's going to happen and we need you to commit to us, your finances. And then these business guys are going like, I don't even know if I'm going to have a business in a minute. So everything just tightens up. And if you're a small scale charity going around going like, can I wet my beak, please? They're like, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I'm going to sort cancer research out after you, or before you, or Childline, or whatever it is that they're supporting. And so all of a sudden, the money really dried up. And so it became more and more difficult for us to do it at the scale we were doing. So what we have now is a slightly reduced version. There's less kids going through in curriculum time. It's more out of hours, and we get a lot of pupil referrals for kids coming through. But yeah, the kind of wholesale, it being part of the curriculum, we hit a bit of a kind of barrier on that. And just like being totally candid, I had also got to the point where I was like, I spent every day of my life going around begging rich people for money, and I was a bit fed up with it. And I was like, that's not really what I got into do this. What I got into this for. The whole wild farm thing had been bubbling for a long time. I was just like this thing's here. I know it makes me feel good. It's kind of an extension of what I'm doing over here with the kids. Why don't I go over here and do Wild Farmed, and why don't we make it a success? And then once it is a success, I'll circle back round and we can get going with Grow again, which is essentially my plan.
Going to flour.
Yeah.
And now where you're at in terms of providing the seeds, the flour, the products themselves, the breads. How did you get to landing on that grain?
So the biggest in the kind of Western world, the biggest arable crop by far is wheat. So if you want to have the most impact from an environmental perspective, then wheat's the one you want to go after. That's how we got here.
That's how you decided.
It's no more complicated. Our whole thing since we decided to take this out of being a kind of pin-up, regen farm in the southwest of France, was we want to do landscape change at scale, at pace.
And obviously you've mentioned regenerative quite a lot, and it's something we talk about on the channel, and sustainable, which is great, but we're already at a place where sustaining not great isn't brilliant. So we kind of have to start to regen. But there also feels like there's lots of definitions and approaches to regen floating around. Have you got like a snapshot of like a, can you give us some clarity? Because we always talk about it and we know it's a thing we should all be aspiring to, but what actually does that mean on the ground? What does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, so the issue with regenerative as a title is there is no actual definition, and there isn't an organisation who's come out and said here's what regenerative is,
or how to measure it, or is it measurable?
It is measurable, definitely. To regenerate is to bring back to life, or to put more, or to increase life year on year. And so ultimately, what we want to be doing is getting more soil biology year on year, whilst also making better quality crops. That's the crux of what we're doing. And there'll be levels in that. We were very clear about the fact that we came out and we set our own like third-party audited standards, because everybody's going to go around now saying regen's this, regen's that. It's going to get co-opted. It will turn into healthy or natural or whatever, and it will be kind of meaningless. So whilst we are a regenerative food brand, we're also wild farmed, and we're brand first. There's 436 or something kind of eco labels. People don't buy stuff because of eco labels, like en masse. People buy stuff because brands, and they feel affiliated and they trust brands, and so we're building Wild Farmed as a brand. It will be, we hope, the gold standard of regen. Essentially, what you're trying to do is mimic nature. Everything that happens in nature is what you want to be going on. Conventional, which you can read across for just chemical farming, heavy industrial chemical farming is basically trying to subdue and subjugate nature, and you're in a war with it the whole time. We're moving back to biology. We're doing observation based farming. So first thing is, you can't do monocultures. Yeah, monocultures don't exist. If you go into the woods, you don't just see one type of tree or one type of plant in there, basically. So it's about bringing diversity back. So we insist on companion planting. So I don't know if you've ever heard of this kind of notion of the three sisters, which was the whole thing they used to do down in South America forever, which was the maize and the beans and the squash or whatever. And so the same principle, you've got to get different plant groups in. So you might do a pea and a barley, or a wheat and a bean, or something like that in the field. Every single farm 200 years ago used to have like sieves, basically like sorters. So you just make sure whatever plants you're putting in, they've got different shaped seeds, or different size seeds. So you put a couple of different gauzes in there, you can separate it out very quickly. You can't have bare earth. Again, bare earth is another kind of man-made thing. If you leave bare earth in nature, what happens? It will cover it up. Just like very rudimentary stuff, but I think it's important, because I've finally just got my head around it after sitting in biology for 5 years and not really listening to anything. But so if you just think of leaves as they are the what do you call, like
solar panels?
Solar panels. Let's say. I was going to call them photovoltaic, but I think that's actually
keep it basic for us.
No, exactly. So the solar panels are the leaves, right? And if you don't have green over the top, the green then takes the energy off the sunlight and puts it into the soil. Like, that's literally what it's doing. So soil will always try and cover itself with something so that it can get the energy to go down into it. So when you go past in the winters, you'll see if you go past the farm, most of them, you see these, kind of beautiful brown furrowed fields, basically, with all these little kind of ridges, and there's not a bit of greenery on it, right? It's a nonsense. So we use cover crops. So cover crops there'll be a mix of, vetch and clover and all sorts of other little, flowers and plants that will be able to, not only give you that green cover, but also bring pollinators into the field as well, So you're not allowed to do monocultures. You have to keep your ground covered at all times. And we do a thing called feeding according to need. So we allow farmers who are trying to transition. What Andy found was he got this farm. It had 80 years of conventional maize, as I told you. It had 0.5% organic matter, so it had no soil biology. You can't will the microbes back to life. You can go out every morning, be as positive as you like, and just say, come on, guys, like, get back. It's not going to happen, right? And then, so the other alternative is if you go into a kind of full organic system, then you've got to take a substantial amount of time in order to let nature take its course and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, whilst fundamentally, you can't get a more sound argument than organic. Like, do you want a plate of food laced with chemicals or one without? I'll take the one without. Thanks very much. The kind of structural parameters with which the organisation is run has meant that a lot of farmers have found it challenging and don't want to take the risk to go towards it. And so what we effectively enable the farmers to do is we pay for them to do what are called SAP tests, like a blood test of the plant. So we pay for that, and then you'll find out that actually, in order to get the nitrogen, which usually is in the ground, it's just not bioavailable, they need to add a bit of manganese or cobalt, or they might need to add a bit of nitrogen, but not as much as a kind of standard conventional system would permit, basically. So we allow you, whilst you're transitioning, to use some chemistry to get yourself off the meds, basically. It's the difference between kind of methadone and going cold turkey. You know? And then we allow you also, or rather we encourage you to get livestock on there at least once every 3 years, going back to that original story I told you with Andy.
The cows,
I think what's amazing about all of that is, and it sounds so obvious when you say it, is that the future of food and farming is basically what happened hundreds of years ago before we messed it all up, but with an added bit of science, which is what we have learned in the last couple of hundred years. So you've got the science to justify what they were already doing correctly.
Yeah.
And it's just like
it's ancient wisdom plus GPS, basically.
and all found in a book that was in the children's section in a charity shop.
Yeah.
Are you happy now? You said you were working, to this point. I've had a similar thing. Is when I get to this point, there'll be the freedom, the happiness. It will all be unlocked, and then actually you start thinking about enjoying the journey for what it is and trying to be content regardless of the situation. How is what you're doing versus what you were doing changed, and do you feel that sense of happiness or contentment?
I'm a lot more content.
Yeah,
definitely. It was interesting. We were we met a month ago. I was doing a talk somewhere, and a lot of the questions afterwards were quite technical. And how does this work? And how does that work? And then this lady just totally just curveballed me and was just like, "What are you doing to nourish yourself, George? This all sounds like quite heavy lifting."
Do a lot of nourishment for the soil, but what about George?
And I was like, you've got me, And like I'd been to see, I love going to meet healers, basically. Like it's my favourite thing. And I'd been to see 3 different kind of mystics or healers or whatever over the course of the last few months. None of whom know each other. None of whom know anything about me. All of them said to me, "You need to get more joy into your life. You need to find more joy. You've got to be nourishing yourself a bit more." They said it in a variety of different ways. One lady told me she had slightly broken English, and she was just like, "More in the morning," And I was like, "You're right.
You're right. I don't have enough of that."
Yeah. And in my kind of like my go-to guy, Jed, who I've been seeing for years, he was just like, "You need to get the gratitude back in. Like you've got to feel the gratitude for this thing, because like just being real, running your own business, trying to effectively kind of go against the system. We're now a team of 45 people. We've got 100 farms around the place. We've got 2 bakeries. There's a lot of moving parts. You've never got enough money. You've never got enough time. It's quite stressful. It's very stressful, and sometimes you're just like, and you really got to. I was saying to my guys Andy and Ed the other day, I was just like, boys, we've got to get some more gratitude into this. Like we've just got to remember. And actually, I felt quite good. I've been lucky. I've had a couple of little short breaks. I just went to
some of those long lunches in Ibiza.
And I've come back and I feel really kind of calm and in a good place. And I'm just going to approach it all with a load more gratitude and like we're just sorting out all the kind of out of home campaign for our new launch that we're doing at the moment, and that falls under my kind of jurisdiction. And there was a moment where I was just like, you're trying to get all these messages and everybody's got their ideas and you're
deadlines and budgets
and the whole thing. I was just like, getting kind of blinky and like, what's happening? Like I can't deal with it. And then just the last few days, I've just sat back and I'm like, right, like, this is great. Like, what a lovely thing to be making, to be able to make a
perspective as well.
billboard,
I know.
to talk about the thing that you're doing, that you've been trying to get off the ground, and like you're doing the, sorting the voiceover out on the TV commercial that's going to go on in the break when Clarkson's Farm, that you're now starring, that Wild Farm's a big part of in season 3 and all. And I'm like, life's good.
Yeah.
Life's good.
It's so important to remember that. And I think, we both sort of circle around the world of food, and I think sometimes necessarily it can get incredibly political and heavy and deep and dark and big system changes and all this. But ultimately, if we can just bring a little bit of joy and a little bit of community, whether that's school kids, farmers, whatever, but
or
a community
back
together.
to the original, your original point, get people around a table eating some food and chilling out.
Yeah.
It's exactly that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is exactly that.
And we can all talk about it, and it's just amazing to hear you're doing it on the ground. It's making a difference. It's really, really awesome. One question that we ask everyone before we kind of wrap this conversation up is, if there is one dish or meal that you think everyone should cook in their lifetime, so not quite sincere, but sort of before they pop their clogs, but that kind of, and it's not a death row meal, but that one thing that everyone should give a go, and it could be as simple or as elaborate as you want. What should everyone try at least once?
I mean, you could even slightly take a bit of a diversion and say something they've got to grow, or maybe they need to grow something.
Thank you for you've arrived at a much better answer than I was going to give you anyway. No. You know
actually,
what? Like we all need to grow some stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's and
It's
you
so
can literally like do
therapeutic and
some
fulfilling.
like do a courgette. It's a doddle.
And they keep coming. Every time you pick it grows back.
Yeah. Like you can't stop them. Basically, it's Day of the Triffids. So just grow some stuff and then put it in your mouth. That will just bring you a little bit closer to nature. And I think ultimately that's really what we've all got to try and where we've got to try and get. Like the bit where it all went a bit wonky was when we separated from nature and we decided we were bigger than it, and we decided we were going to try and kind of dominate it. And we all know how that's going to work out. So realise you're part of a bigger ecosystem through growing a bit of food.
Get your hands in the soil.
I'm definitely inspired.
Well,
George,
thank you
so
It's
much.
been incredible.
Thank you very much, guys.
Best
really
of luck.
appreciate it. Wicked. Thank you for the support.
Not at all.